The talk around town in New England, in the front office, has to be, first and foremost, the offensive line. Again, look at the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. You need an offensive line. Ask Patrick Mahomes. He could tell you. But as well as offensive line, we know the New England Patriots need wide receivers, and they've already made some moves to hopefully help the wide receiver core. Let's jump into it. You guys know my name is Aaron, bringing Patriots content on the daily. So do me a favor, you guys know, please hit the subscribe button, mean the world to me. As well, hit the like button and comment below. First question is this: of the current wide receivers, what wide receiver do you think is going to have the best year in 2025, 2026? Comment below. I'm going to tell you first and foremost, I think it's Pop. I love Pop. I've loved him for a long time. I've said get the ball in his hands. It is as simple as that. So let's jump into it. So we look at Jaquay Jackson. Now you might be thinking, who the heck is this guy? Well, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to jump right into it. He was a one-year player at Rutgers. Before that, he played Division II at a college called University California of Pennsylvania. Tell me how that makes sense. But he played with the Falcons. He was picked up briefly, then he was dropped, and then the Patriots picked him up because the Patriots knew we have a rough wide receiver core. And we know that it went through a lot of hiccups, dropping people, all these different things. And Jaquay Jackson ended up on the Patriots. Now, the second game in the preseason, he ended up having a non-contact knee injury. But this is what we need to look at with this, with them, the Patriots re-signing Jackson, is the fact that they see someone, especially this new regime in Mike Vrabel and others, Josh McDaniels, they see something in him where they say, for right now, I'm not saying for the next season, but for right now with what we have, he is worth keeping. He's a young asset at 25, 6'1", a perimeter wide receiver. He is worth keeping on this roster at the moment. Now, granted, they're not going to be paying them the big bucks. I'm not going out there saying this guy's going to be a massive game changer, but coming off an injury and being an undrafted free agent who is dropped by another team, they have to see something in him. They absolutely have to see something in him. Now, if you remember during the preseason, he did make a wild catch from Joe Milton where it was almost a circus catch where he kind of went around and in like midair to turn and catch the ball. It was very impressive. And so, again, potential is there. So I think a lot of people see when a new coaching staff comes in, a lot of times it's, hey, we're clearing house and we're bringing in people that we want. Yes, that's true. We have seen that. But with players, again, heads need to turn for you, especially if you're a fringe player. Jackson, for sure, fringe player. You look at him and you have to be able to say, is he worth having on the team? Again, you look at his stats from Rutgers a couple years ago, so that would be 2023. Nothing crazy. He had one touchdown. I think he had just over 361 yards, 12 starts. Nothing crazy, but to be able to go from Division II then to go to Big Ten, whether it's Rutgers or not, Big Ten football, and then being able to get picked up as an undrafted free agent by one team and then another team after you're dropped from them, he has to have something. So the question is it going to be an asset for the Patriots moving forward? My answer is twofold. There's a possibility if he comes back from this injury and he can do well, especially when it comes to the, coming up into training camp and all these different things, which is a long time off. You're like, Aaron, why the heck are you talking about that? Listen, I know, but just hear me out. He has potential. There's a reason, obviously, he was re-signed. He has potential. But the Patriots, with the cap space they have, with the draft picks they have, I would be surprised if Jackson is still on the team on the 53-man roster. Could he very well be on the practice squad? Yes. Very much a possibility. I would, and he can prove me wrong. He could prove me wrong. But again, I think it would be a surprise if Jackson was on the 53-man roster. I see him more as a practice squad player, but we will see moving forward. And as we're on the topic of him, John Giles is another guy we got to talk about that we have talked about before. So he is a player from West Florida, another just small, tiny school, but just lit it up at West Florida, and he is a specimen. He's 6'3", 219, huge guy, like Jackson, a perimeter wide receiver, so your traditional X. And between those two, and we look at, let me jump into this real quick, the 7 wide receivers currently on the roster. You see Booty, you see Bourne, you see Douglas, Polk, Baker, Giles, Jackson. Rough. In my opinion, as I said earlier, I think Pop Douglas has the most promise right now going into next year. I really like him in the slot. He's fun to watch. Get the ball in his hands. And I was saying that earlier on in the season. I was like, why have they not targeted him in those first couple games? And then Jacoby started and AVP started, and you're like, look, he can make some plays. But Kendrick Bourne, we know, is older and getting to that point where he has been injury prone. I don't think going into this year he should be the number one guy. People might disagree with that, but again, we have the money. Why not go get a true number one receiver? Kayshon Boutte, he showed glimpses during the season that made you feel optimistic about him. He's done with his whole gambling at LSU, so who knows, but still unproven. Polk and Baker, we all know, we've talked about 100 million times. We thought they had a ton of potential, and they literally sank to the bottom of the ocean, and it was rough. And so hopefully their careers can be, and it was just 1 year. It was 1 year. So Josh McDaniels can work his magic and resurrect these guys' careers, hopefully. But just looking at the names, this you could easily say this is the worst wide receiver core in the NFL right now. Yes. But again, potential is on the board. But these names, these 7 names, 100% will not be here come the 53-man roster. I would not be surprised if this wide receiver room is absolutely gutted besides a handful of people. Again, don't be surprised too if you see Jalen Polk put in a trade. Maybe he's a guy that, they're like, he has potential, but not for us. Plan on them drafting with the amount of draft picks they have. Plan on them drafting a wide receiver at some point. I'm not saying it's early on. It could be mid-round. It could be later. Who knows? But don't sleep on that. As well, picking up one in free agency. It's going to happen. So what this wide receiver core looks like, who do you think of these 7 are going to stay? Again, Jackson, Giles, I could definitely see them on the practice squad. So, and again, let's remember the wide receivers that we once had that are not now gone. Thornton's gone. Osborne's gone. Juju Smith-Schuster's gone. And so don't be surprised. What do you think? Comment below. What's your thoughts on Jackson, Giles? You just see them as practice squad guys. Do you think they have some potential? Obviously, there has to be something there if someone like Jackson is getting re-signed. What are your thoughts? Comment below. Would love to hear from you. Next, jump into a 7-round mock draft, and then after that, we're going to jump into the old New York awful Jets. That will be momentarily, but I love this mock draft. Mason Graham, I'll fly through it quick. Mason Graham, and I'm going to give you kind of a rationale of why I like it so much. Again, you're going to see more and more after the Eagles' dominant performance on the defensive line. I think more and more people are going to start saying we need to have a defensive line that is absolutely incredibly dominant. Mason Graham is one of those guys. As I told you, he has the speed of an edge rusher, but he plays defensive tackle, and he weighs well over 300 pounds. I'm a Michigan State fan, and a lot of you know that. But I'm all for Mason Graham. Second, offensive tackle, love it. Pure starter off the bat is Connerly. So Oregon would love it. And that's, again, basically a first-round pick. Now, it says here that in multiple other places that the offensive tackle is a deep class. But what is interesting is a lot of people still, you look at Will Campbell right now is the number 1 offensive tackle on most people's boards. And then it is Calvin Banks, which is from Texas. And he is in a lot of mock drafts have him in the low to mid teens. So a lot of times when you have better offensive tackles, usually they're higher up. And so I think from what a lot of people are saying is, yes, there's a lot of good but there's not, like, think of like a Penei Sewell, a Lane Johnson. These guys when Penei Sewell was drafted in that draft class, I will never forget watching, and they talked about if there's one person who's going to make the Hall of Fame out of this class, it's going to be him. Oregon guy, Connor Lee, Oregon guy, would be cool. Wide receiver out of TCU. Love TCU's offense. He's that tried and true ex-wide receiver, bigger guy. I love that. Again, pair that with a solid pop, and then who knows for that number 3, maybe a Kayshon Boutte or whatever. Very interesting. Would love to see that. But again, plan on them getting someone in free agency to be the true number 1. So Williams could be that number 3. So we will see. Then we go into center. Interesting because Cole Strange, but who knows what's going to happen there. David Andrews comes back, obviously just been injured, but that would be not necessarily a bad pick. I've said before, this is a deep running back class. You're saying, Aaron, you're talking way too freaking fast. Slow down. I'm excited. Again, you guys know, love NFL, love college football just as much. Trevor Etienne, running back. I think I don't mind this pick. Again, I've told you before, I am a Michigan State fan, but I really like Mullins and Edwards. I like Henderson. I like Scadaboo. There's a lot of guys I like that I think could be paired with Ramondre Stevenson, and we know Vrabel is I want to run the ball down your throat type of guy. So I plan on. Don't be surprised if the Patriots in a later round take a running back. Again, deep running back class. Here we go. We jump into the edge rushers out of Notre Dame. He was fun watching the national championship, besides the fact they got absolutely dogged on by the Buckeyes. Another tackle. Tight end. Someone mentioned, what about Warren from Penn State and that 4th overall pick? He is I don't always like comparing players necessarily, but he shows a lot of things that Gronk used to have. They said, quote unquote, he's a baby Gronk. I love that, but that's not a necessity. When you have Hunter Henry, when you have Austin Hooper, hopefully re-signing Austin Hooper, we'll see. But I think it would be, in a later round, sure, don't mind it. But early on for Loveland or Warren, I think that would be too much of a stretch at that time. Aiden Williams out of Minnesota Duluth, so we're talking Division II. He apparently had a really good game in the East-West Shrine game, and you never know, you can find those diamonds in the rough later on. But I like this, a very offensive line minded draft with Mason Graham most likely being one, as we've talked about, rising up the ranks, being one of the best prospects, definitely defensive tackle in this draft. And so the more I think, listen, I start reading, you start reading things, you start watching film and other stuff, and you start saying, okay, I can be convinced of this guy. And so like McMillan, if you watch any of his film from Arizona, it's great to watch. If you watch him during the season, you're like, well, Aaron, why the heck would I be watching Big 12 football, Arizona football? Listen, sometimes football, in my household, football is just on the TV. Sometimes I know there's a football game on late August college football, UMass versus New Mexico State. I believe it was last year or 2 years ago. That was on my TV. That's how much I was like, I am ready for football to be back. Have it on the TV. Let's go. So it is what it is. So not ashamed of it. Last but not least, New York Jets are leaving Mr. Aaron Rodgers. I do not think Aaron Rodgers' time is necessarily done in the NFL. We'll see where the heck he goes. But the question is, for the New York Awful Jets, who will they be picking up? Now, this has a couple different options. Tyrod Taylor, I don't see. And let's forget before I even jump into this, Aaron Glenn is the new head coach, defensive coordinator coming from the Lions. I do not think that Aaron Glenn is in the boat of saying, let's get a journeyman quarterback to be starting. I don't see that. I think he wants to start out with a bang. And so Jordan Travis, Florida State, he was the quarterback that when they went undefeated and they said, we should have made the playoffs. And then they got absolutely demolished by a Georgia team who sat a lot of players. Now, granted, Florida State did sit a lot of players too, but Jordan Davis, I'm sure has some qualities to him, 5th round pick, but I don't see either of those being starters. Justin Fields on this list is one of the most intriguing players. And I say that because I think when he was in Chicago, they didn't really have a lot of faith in him. He had great games. He had some rough games. But again, that's an Eberflus-led team. I don't know what to think necessarily. But Justin Fields, I don't think would necessarily be an awful pick, and I think they could get a good deal. Russell Wilson, I would love that because I think that would only bring the Jets down, but I don't see that happening. Kirk Cousins, he's from the area I'm from. He played for my rival high school. He is a great guy, but unfortunately, I think his NFL career is coming to a quick end. Don't think the Jets are going to pick him up. Sam Darnold would be interesting. Again, who knows what the heck's going to happen with Sam Darnold? A lot of people say the Vikings would be stupid not to take him back, but then they have J.J. McCarthy. What is the move? Sam Darnold going back to New York would be wild. So we will see what happens, but I doubt that. Jameis Winston, though everyone in the NFL for the most part loves famous Jameis, another quarterback out of FSU. I do not see that coming. And then when it comes to the draft, they could trade up and get Cam Ward, possibly get Sanders. Again, I'm on the boat, and you'll hear me say this more than once. I think it's a possibility that Shedeur Sanders drops in the draft. Remember years ago, Johnny Manziel, obviously his NFL career was gone like that, but Johnny Manziel dropped quite a bit. And so Shedeur Sanders, I don't know. I think Johnny Manziel, he could have had an NFL career. If you ever watch his documentary, if you got to focus on football, but beside the point, was a phenomenal player to watch in college. Jalen Milroe, I think he is going to drop greatly in the draft. I think a lot of people are realizing that he is not as good as a lot of these quarterbacks. Think of Malik Willis. Malik Willis sure has had some games with the Packers that have been okay coming in, but I think that he is going to drop. Some people have him mocked originally in a late first round. Not a chance. Not a chance with Jalen Milroe. Jackson Dart is a guy I see going up and I think would be a steal for a lot of teams. So out of Ole Miss, but when it's all said and done, I think that possibly you could see someone like a Justin Fields. Maybe they try to get Sam Darnold. Maybe they take a chance on someone else, but it's possible they trade up. If they trade up, maybe try to jump in and get Cam Ward or whatnot. We'll see what happens, but it'll be interesting. Regardless, I think that the Jets are going to have a down year, especially with a new quarterback. So we'll see what happens. But comment below. Tell me what you guys think. Anything we talked about today. You guys rock. On the way out, you guys know, hit the subscribe button, wherever the heck it is. I think it's on my face to the left, right, whoever knows. Just click it. Mean the world to me. We'll talk later. Peace.